And here we go. I'm just going to mute everyone. Unless everyone, there's no background noise. It's fine. Okay, if you have background noise, please mute your microphones. Hello, everybody. It's so wonderful to be here. Welcome back to the Thinking Talmudist. I am very honored to announce that we are going to continue all of our classes as usual throughout the entire summer, right? So there's not going to be any break for any of the classes. We're going to continue them on a regular schedule. So it really is, it'll keep something in our week that will be consistent, right? Even if we're traveling, Zoom is always available on our phones. It's available on our computers. So I don't want you to feel like Torch is going to abandon you this summer. They're going to take a break. I'm not going to see them anymore. No. We're here for you. You know, every day of the week we have classes, and I'm really, really excited about it. And this past Wednesday, we had our 10th Wednesdays with Wolbe's. So for those of you who haven't been joining us on those, you have a lot to catch up. Otherwise, we are going to dig right into 29B, actually. It said on the Facebook, it says it's 29A, but it's actually 29B. And we are in middle of the obligations of a father to his sons. Okay, what are the obligations? So a further brisa defines other laws of precedence regarding the mitzvah of redeeming a firstborn. So remember, there were 5 or 6 things that the Talmud said that a father is obligated to his son, right? To teach him Torah, to marry him off, to so teach him Torah, marry him off, circumcise him, redeem him, teach him a trade, and then the 6th one was to teach him how to swim, which is really survival tools, all the survival tools that are necessary. My rabbi told me, I don't know if I mentioned this last week, my rabbi told me that in our generation, it's not only to teach our children how to swim, but also to teach our children how to drive, right? If you don't teach your child how to drive, you're putting his life at risk, right? Because today everyone drives. People don't swim as much as they drive. They drive much more. So it's important, it's an obligation on a father to teach his children how to swim and, of course, to drive. So now the Talmud continues about what it means to redeem the firstborn. To redeem the firstborn. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught in the Brisa, Lifdos as bno v'lalos l'regel. If a man needs to redeem his son and to journey to the temple for a festival, which one comes first? He only has 5 silver coins. Either he could pay for his ride up to the temple, which is also a biblical commandment, or to redeem his son. Which one comes first? The Talmud says, Podeh es b'no. The law is that he should first redeem his son, and afterward make the journey for the festival. Rabbi Yehuda Omer. However, Rabbi Yehuda says, no, he should journey for the festival, and afterwards he should redeem his son. Shazu mitzvah overes, vizu mitzvah she'eno overes. Because this mitzvah, the mitzvah of going to the temple for the holiday, is a mitzvah that passes with time, and must therefore be performed now, while the mitzvah to redeem our son, our firstborn, right, is a mitzvah that does not pass with time and can therefore be performed later. So he says, do what you need to do now, and what you don't need to do now, do later. So that's the opinion of, the first opinion here of Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, so the Gemara seeks to clarify the reasoning of the Tanna Kama. The first opinion that was said, which is our sages, our early opinion, that we should, that according to the early opinion, we should first redeem our son and then go to be Ola Regel, which is to go up to Jerusalem for the festival. The Gemara seeks to clarify the reasoning. Bishlam Rabbi Yehuda, or it is all well according to Rabbi Yehuda. Kiddush Amar Taima, for he stated a reason for his ruling. He gave a reason, right? One passes, one doesn't pass. The one that passes, do right away. The one that doesn't pass, you can do later. So he gave a reason. Ela Rabbana my time out, but the Rabbana on the early opinion, the first opinion, did not give a reasoning. So what's its reasoning, right? Why do they rule that redemption should be performed first? The Gemara replies to Amar Kra, for the verse first states, Kol b'chor bonecha tifteh, all firstborn of your sons you shall redeem. V'hadar, and after that it says, Lo yira'u panai rekom, they shall not appear before me empty-handed. Since the first part of the verse deals with the mitzvah to redeem the firstborn, and the latter part refers to the mitzvah to travel to the temple, we can deduce that the mitzvah to redeem takes precedence over the mitzvah of journeying to Israel, to the temple. Another brayso on the topic of redemption. So, right, so we concluded, right, that we had reasons to each side. Which one do we say for halachic purposes? If you're interested in knowing, which one do you follow? So first, the halacha is that you first redeem the firstborn, and then you go to Israel. Okay, that's the halacha. If you just want to know. Okay, so another brayso on the topic of redemption says as follows: Tana Rabbana, the rabbis taught on a brayso, Minayin she'im hayu lo chamisha bani michamish nashim. From where in scripture can it be derived that if a man has 5 sons born to him from 5 different wives, shechayev lives as a skulam, that he has an obligation to redeem all of them. Why? Because it's the opening up of the womb of each of those women, so he can fulfill this mitzvah, right? 5 times. Talmud Lomar, because it says, Kol b'chor bonecha tifteh, all firstborn of your sons you shall redeem. The commentaries explain, since the verse states that all firstborn sons shall be redeemed, it can be inferred that a mother's firstborn son must be redeemed, even if he is the second or third born of the father. Okay? Make sense? So it means if the father has multiple wives, each firstborn son, each opening of the womb of each of those women, even though he has already a boy from a different wife, it's fine. He can fulfill the mitzvah of Pidyon Haben multiple times.
Rabbi, what if she has a daughter first and then a son?
No, it has to be the opening of the womb has to be a boy.
All right, thank you.
So the Gemara asks why a verse must be cited to teach this law. Pshita, it is obvious. What do you need the Talmud to teach this law? It's a simple thing. Right? The merciful one makes a child's liability to redemption dependent on whether he is the one who opened the womb of his mother. And if 5 sons are all the initial children of 5 different wives, then each of these sons has opened the womb of his respective mother. Right? So what the Talmud's asking here, like what's going on here? Why do we need to ask this? The Gemara answers, Mahu detema nelith b'chor minachol. You might have said, let us expound a gezerah shava. A gezerah shava is an equal how do you say it? Like a parallel law. Bruce, help me here. It's gezerah shava is a parallel inference. A parallel inference, right? So here you have like this. Because, linking the word bechor written in connection with redemption to the word bechor written in connection with inheritance. We would thus make the following comparison. Malahalon rashis ono, just as there in connection with inheritance, the bechor, the firstborn, is the son who is the first of his father's strength, the father's first child. Afkan rashis ono, so too here in connection with redemption, a bechor must be the first of the father's strength, the father's first child. You would think, right, if we didn't teach what we just taught in the Talmud, that it's the beginning of the mother's womb being open, right? So what happens? It could be 5 different boys. And you'd have to redeem 5 different sons. But what? If you learn Bechor from another place, where's the other time it says Bechor regarding inheritance? Over there, by Bechor of inheritance, it says only about the first of the fathers. Right? So if you're trying to make a comparison from one to the other, by inheritance, it goes by the firstborn to the father. He gets a double portion. But not a firstborn to a different wife from the father. Got it? One goes on the mother and one goes on the father. By inheritance, it goes on the father. The father's first child, period. That's it. But when it comes to redeeming the firstborn, it goes by the father's first, by the mother's first child, the opening of her womb from this father. Okay, got it? Everybody, is everyone frozen? Everyone's frozen. Everyone's good. Okay, I see everyone moving now. Okay, good. Okay, so that's why the Torah needed to tell us that. He says, "Malahalon reishis ono," just as. Oh, so Kamash Malan. Therefore, to teach that this is not the case, Scripture informs us that all firstborn of your sons. All firstborn of your sons, you shall redeem. All of them. Okay? Got it? Clear? Excellent. So, the commentary just explains here that a son must be redeemed even if he is only the firstborn of the mother. If he's only the firstborn of the mother, not the firstborn of the father, you still have to redeem him. Right? Okay. The next clause of the Brisa had stated that a father must teach his son Torah. The Gemara now derives this law from Scripture. Okay, so where do we know that a father needs to teach his son Torah? We said about bris, we said about redeeming the firstborn. Now we're going to go on to the next mitzvah that the father is obligated, and that is to teach Torah to his son.
In via hafta.
Well, we'll see. Very good. Very good. Very good. So Lalamdo Torah, the Brisa had stated that a father is obligated to teach his son Torah. Menolon, from where in Scripture do we know this? Dichsiv, for it is written, V'limadatem osam es benechem. You shall teach them to your sons. Very good, Bruce. Right? And that is in Deuteronomy 11:19. The word them is understood as referring to the commandments of the Torah. What are you teaching them? Right? It says, and you shall teach them to your sons. What is teaching them? What are you teaching them? So our sages tell us that is referring to the commandments of the Torah. For the scriptural section in which this appears deals primarily with this subject of learning Torah. Right? And which opens with the exhortation, V'haya im shema tishma'u, and it will be that if you indeed listen to my commandments, that I instruct you this day. So what is it referring to? It's referring to the mitzvos of the Torah, the commandments of the Torah. Okay. Says the Talmud now. The Gemara continues, broadening the obligation to teach Torah a step further. And in a case where one's father has not taught him Torah, he is obligated to teach himself Torah. As it is written, you shall study them. You shall study, what is them? The Torah, its commandments. Yes. So this is an obligation that you have an obligation to teach yourself Torah. So if you were not fortunate enough to have parents who sent you to a Jewish day school to teach you Torah, it doesn't mean you're free to go. It means you are obligated to teach yourself Torah. Right? To get into torch classes and to listen to videos, to watch videos and listen to podcasts and to do whatever you can to educate yourself with Torah. The Gemara now derives a mother's exemption from the mitzvah of teaching her son Torah. From where do we know that a mother is not charged with this responsibility? Right? For it says, vilimadetem, you shall teach, and by vowelizing the letters of the words differently, it will come to read, ulimadetem, you shall study. An exegetical comparison between the two words is thus established, yielding the following principle. Kol shemitzuva lilmod, anyone who is commanded to study Torah himself, mitzuva lilamid, is likewise commanded to teach Torah to his son. Kol she'einu mitzuva lilmod, and anyone who is not commanded to study himself, eino mitzuva lilamid, is not commanded to teach his son. Thus, since a woman is not required to study Torah herself, she is likewise not responsible to teach Torah to her son. Okay, Aliza, you have a question brewing. I see it.
You totally see it. So where does the daughter fall in here, or we're not going there yet?
Oh, very good question. Very good question. So I was hoping someone was going to ask this. Susan was going to jump on it right away. Susan, right? What was your question, Susan? What? Women aren't obligated to learn Torah?
Yes, what?
I know. Like,
right? What's going on here?
My connection is not good. You're getting all fuzzy. My connection isn't good
I'm
here.
sorry, right? But that's the question that Susan would have been asking, is what are you talking about? Women are not obligated to learn Torah. Why aren't women obligated to learn Torah? Right?
We're more holy?
Well, that's always true. But if focus on one word. The one word that you need to focus on is commanded.
Yeah.
Women are not commanded to learn Torah. Are they allowed to learn Torah? Of course they're allowed to learn Torah. But there's no commandment to learn Torah. Men, it's an interesting thing. If you just notice, men have many, many more commandments that they're obligated to than women do. You hear this, Dave? Right? Men have many more commandments that they're commanded to than women are. Right? Men have an obligation to pray 3 times a day. Men have an obligation to wear tefillin every day. Men have an obligation to go to shul and daven with a minyan. Right? There's obligations that men have that women don't have. Men have obligation to wear tzitzis every day. Right? So what's going on?
Because we need the help.
Exactly.
Right. Exactly.
We need the structure. We need to be grounded. We need to be ordered. Told what to do. Get on schedule. Put your tefillin on every morning. Put your tzitzit on. Right? Wear your talit. Go to shul. Go learn Torah. Right? Because men are wild animals and they need to be tamed. They need to be trained. Right? So the Torah understands the nature of men and says, men, you need to get yourself in order. Right? So I'm going to command you a lot of commandments so that you figure things out very quickly. Right? And women who have their stuff in order, right? They don't need as many reminders. They don't need the obligation. It happens to be that we know this. If you go to any of the Torch classes, you'll see that there are more women than men. Right? There are more women than men in classes. Right? Because they're not obligated and they come to learn anyway. So you see, the Torah didn't need to obligate them. Right? Okay. So now, so the above derivation rests on the fact that a woman need not teach herself Torah. The Gemara now determines the source for this. Okay. One second, we did that. Did we do that? Okay, so we did it. This derivation in turn rests on the premise that a woman need not be taught Torah by her parents. The Gemara now derives the source for this. You know what? We're going to go back. Okay. And from where do we know that a woman is not obligated to teach herself Torah? For it is written, you shall teach, which can also be read, and you shall study. right? This leads us to formulate the following principle. Kol shacher mitzuvim l'lamdo, anyone whom others are commanded to teach, mitzuve l'lamed es atzmo, is likewise commanded to teach himself. Because she'ein acherim mitzuvim l'lamdo, and anyone who others are not commanded to teach, ein mitzuve l'lamed es atzmo, is not commanded to teach himself. Hence, since a woman is not someone whom her father, others, is commanded to teach, it follows that she is not required to teach herself. Okay. Now, this derivation, in turn, rests on the premise that a woman need not teach herself, be taught Torah by her parents. The Gemara now derives the source for that as well. And from where do we know that others are not obligated to teach her? Others, as in her parents or anyone else, is not obligated to teach this woman Torah. Because the verse says, you shall teach them to your sons, and which implies that you must not, you're not obligated, teach only your sons, and you need to teach, and you need not teach your daughters. Okay? It means, that you must teach only your sons, and you need not teach your daughters. Okay? So from there we learn it very clearly, as benechem, your sons, not your daughters. And from here we know that the parents don't have an obligation. If the parents don't have an obligation, they themselves don't have an obligation. If they themselves don't have an obligation, they are obligated to teach their children.
Rabbi?
Yes, sir.
Perhaps I have a conflicting source.
Let's hear.
The Midrash says that God was, before he gave us the Torah, said, what guarantees can you give me?
Right.
That your children will learn the Torah. And it goes, I won't go through all the derivations, but the last one is, the women said, we will teach it to our children. And because of that, God gave us the Torah. Well, it seems to me that they, although not originally commanded, they have taken a contractual obligation to teach it to their children, because it was predicated upon their promise that we, the women, will teach it to our children, that God said, then I will give you the Torah, and in fact gave it to us. They've made a promise. The price of the promise was paid, and so they have made an obligation directly with God that they would teach it. And so Yitzhak stayed in the tents of the women and studied Torah all day.
Right. So just so that I clarify that midrash. So there are many midrashim, and we can't get into all of them. But let's understand as follows: that what the women guaranteed is that they will send their children to learn Torah, and they will encourage their husbands to sit and learn Torah with their sons. They who does carpool to the schools? The mothers, right? Who picks up the children from school? The mothers. They're fulfilling their promise that they will teach their children Torah. Okay, by picking them up, ensuring that they learn Torah, and having what they need. Okay.
I thought I had found something.
There's no contradictions in the Torah. Even if you found, it wouldn't be a contradiction. We'd figure it out. Right? A brisa defines a man's obligation to study Torah himself in relation to his obligation to facilitate his son's Torah. Right? Because we have to go back to that. If we're saying that if you're obligated, then you have to teach others. You have to teach your son. Right? But we never established that the father is obligated to learn himself. So let's see what let's see what the Talmud says about that. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught in the brisa, who lilmod, if a man has limited funds, and it is a matter of whether he shall go to study Torah, uvno lilmod, or his son shall go to study Torah, who kodem uvno, he takes precedence over his son. So if you only have enough money for one of you to go, the father or the son, who should go to learn Torah? The father should go learn Torah. Rabbi Yehuda says, Im bno zari zumamulach v'talmudo miskayim biyado bno kodmo. Rabbi Yehuda says, no. If the son is diligent, bright, and retains that which he has studied, no kodmo, then his son takes precedence over him. Okay? So again, we have a similar argument that we had before about going to the temple or redeeming the firstborn. It was an argument between the Tanakama, which is the primary sages, let's call them, and Rabbi Yehuda. And it ended up being like the Tanakama, like the sages. Now we have a similar argument, but this is about about the obligation for one to learn Torah.
Rabbi,
Yes.
but this is not a one-time thing. If the son's going to have opinion of Ben or a bris, that's a one-time thing, and they have to do that before going to the temple. But learning Torah is not a one-time thing; it's a lifetime thing. Plus, which if the father goes and learns Torah, he can teach it to the son what he's learned.
Right, and that's why Rabbi Yehuda has his caveat. He says that's true, except if the son is a sharp-minded fellow. Right, teach him Torah because he might get it better than the father. All right, so let's see further. So a good point then, right? So the Gemara cites an example to illustrate Rabbi Yehuda's point. Ki hod Rav Yaakov bereid Rav Acha bar Yaakov. It is like that episode involving Rav Yaakov, son of Rav Acha bar Yaakov. Shedare avua kamei da Abaye. His father sent him to study under Abaye. Ki asa. When he came back home after some time at the academy, his father saw that he did not have an acute command of the material he studied. Amar Le, his father said to him, Ana adifa menoch, it is better that I study than you. Tuv at the ezil ana. You remain here so that I will be able to go back and study. Okay, meaning because the son was sharper, they sent him. But when the father realized that the son wasn't sharper, he says it's better for me to go than for you to go. Okay, so the narrative continues. Shama Abaye de Kahava Osi. Abaye heard that Rav Acha bar Yaakov was coming to study under him. Hava hahu mazik be Rabbanon de Abaye. Now there was a certain demon that resided in the study hall of Abaye's academy, Dechi Havu Aile Basrein. And it presented such danger that when people would walk up to the study hall in pairs, Afilu biyamama have mitazke. Even during the daytime, they would be tormented. Amar Luhu, thus Abaye said to his students, Lo leisiv le inish ushpiza. No one should invite Rav Acha to spend the night as a guest in their house, and he will therefore be forced to sleep in the study hall. Perhaps in the merit of his outstanding piety, a miracle will occur and the demon will be killed. Right? It seems that Abaye was reasonably certain that such a miracle would occur. Oh, bas bahu be Rabbanon. It so happened that Rav Acha went and slept in the study hall. Idame le kitanina deshiva reishvasa. The demon appeared to him in the form of a 7-headed serpent. Kol kriya dechora. He began to pray for its destruction, and at every bow that he took during the prayer, nasar chad reishe. One of the serpent's heads fell off. Amar luhu l'mochar. The next day, Rav Acha said to Abaye and his students, Ilos rachesh nisan. If a miracle had not occurred, sakintin, you would have endangered me. Meaning he was upset. Why did you put me into the study hall to sleep and then have to perform this miracle? If this miracle would have happened, I would have been dead. The Brisa discusses further laws. I'm not sure how this relates to our case here. Okay. The Brisa discusses further laws of precedence regarding the mitzvah of studying Torah. Tana Rabbanon. The rabbis taught in the Brisa, Lilmo Torah v'lisa isha. If it is a matter of whether to study Torah or to take a wife, what do you do first? Yilmo Torah v'achar כך yisa isha. He should first devote himself to the study of Torah, and afterwards take a wife for himself. And if he finds it impossible for him to remain without a wife, then he should get married. He should take her as a wife, and afterwards study Torah.
Rabbi?
Yes.
I have a couple questions. It takes me a little longer.
No problem.
The first one is, does a man have a obligation to send his child to a yeshiva, or can he teach at home? Torah?
You can teach him at home. No. The obligation is for the father to teach his son Torah.
He can teach it from, he doesn't have to go to religious school.
No, absolutely not. But if the father can't do it because the father either doesn't know or doesn't have the time, he needs to support his family, et cetera, then the father should send him to a school where the idea of school is to replace the parents in their responsibility of educating their child. There's no obligation for there to be school. There is obligation for the father to teach his son Torah.
All right, and secondly, the last point you made, what if it wasn't for your wife, and I'm not saying who I'm talking about either, that you would ever learn Torah? So wouldn't the wife come first?
Come first. Okay, yes. So here's I had a story recently where a young man.
Every question, you have a story. When I ask a question, there's always a story.
You always inspire me to say a true story.
Oh yeah, sure.
But that's like a kibbutz.
Yeah.
So what happened was like this. I got a phone call from a young man who's been learning with Torch for a bunch of months, about 6 months, 7 months. And he is dating a girl and they want to get engaged, but he also wants to go to yeshiva. So the question is, what should he do? So I said to him like this. I said to him, I want to tell you 3 reasons why you should go to yeshiva first. I said, number 1 is because yeshiva is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, right? It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And you'll be able to, you go learn and you become a great person. And okay. Second reason is because she really loves you and she's going to wait for you, right? She is going to wait for you. She said she's going to wait for you, right? Even though she wants you ideally to get engaged and married, now, but she's going to wait for you. And the third reason, I said, you have to tell her, yeshiva will make you a better husband. Yeshiva will make you a better husband. You will be a better person because you go to yeshiva. And therefore, I recommend as the best training for your marriage, go to yeshiva. My rabbi used to say having a difficult roommate is a segula, is a good omen for a happy marriage. He said, because if you learn to get along with a difficult roommate, you learn to get along with a difficult spouse, right? And, Hashem tested me a lot when I was in yeshiva with difficult roommates, and he gave me the most amazing wife. I don't know, I didn't need any preparation for this. But the truth is that in yeshiva, I had some really difficult roommates. And thank God, was able to get past it. But I remember he would always say, difficult roommate. He said, I'm not going to change your room in the middle of the year. Right? A difficult roommate, learn to figure it out. So, okay, let's get further in the Talmud here.
Rabbi, can I ask you a question here?
Of course.
About the women learning, then how are young girls supposed to learn some of the, all the important laws in the Torah that teach us how to behave? How are they learning that? From their mothers? Who's teaching them this stuff then?
Yeah, so the obligation is, the mothers teach the daughters, and the mothers teach the daughters. And today, in modern day, you should just know that back in the early 1900s, there was a very, very special woman. Her name was Sarah Schneer. And Sarah Schneer, I was actually at her house in Poland, and I was in her school that she opened. She was a seamstress. And many mothers and daughters would come to her to sew certain clothes, and she realized that the girls were getting very involved with Polish men because they didn't have what to do. So they would go to the gymnasium and they'd go and do ballet and they had nothing for the girls. There were Jewish girls, they had nothing for them. So she decided that she's opening up a school called a Beit Yaakov, a Beis Yaakov. And I will tell you that when we all go to the world to come and we see who is the Moses of the last generation, the last 100 years, it will have been Sarah Schneer. She saved the Jewish girls of our generation. She saved the Jewish girls of the past 100 years.
Rabbi.
Yes.
Had a question, regarding men's obligation, the difference between men and women as far as their right. With the Orthodox observance, why are women not allowed to become rabbis?
Why can't they become rabbis?
Yes, why?
Who said they can't?
In Orthodox observance, Orthodox tradition?
Right. So like this, a woman can be a rabbi if she knows the information and she gets tested on it. She can be a rabbi just like a man can. Right?
Have there ever been a woman rabbi, an Orthodox?
So let's define what a rabbi is. You mean a congregational leader?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So then we have to get into a different discussion, which is a woman taking a role in public. Okay, a public role, which is a whole different discussion. We can leave that for another time because it's really not in the realm of this, and I for sure don't want to do it on Facebook. For sure. Okay, because I will have stones thrown through my windows. Okay, so let Ron. We'll have a coffee date and we'll discuss it, or we'll do it in an in-person, God willing, when we're able to resume our in-person classes of the Talmud study. Please remember this question because it's a very important question and it deserves to have clarity brought to this topic. Just to answer the technical part of your question, yes, women can be rabbis, but they don't serve in public positions. Okay, and the reason they don't do it is for modesty. Okay, so while you have women who do get involved in halachic decisions, for example, all women's issues, you'll have a woman who can be, she's not the halachic decider, but she can get involved in certain elements of the halachic discussion. Okay, and they get involved with it, and I would say that there are women rabbis, but they don't hold leadership roles because of the modesty elements. And anyone who denies that there is a modesty element is not being truthful. Okay, because I've heard about certain female rabbis that many people have claimed to me personally. They've claimed to me that they're very excited to go to synagogue to see the rabbi. Okay, that's not why we should go to the synagogue.
Yeah. Okay?
That's not a reason to go to the synagogue, right? That's for all the wrong reasons to go to synagogue. It's not in the scope of our class today, but it's a very good question that deserves to have more elaboration on this matter.
Can she then teach the women?
Of course.
Well, somebody has.
Many women educators. Many brilliant women educators who are phenomenal.
I mean, a female rabbi, can she teach men? Or is that the modesty issue?
There is a modesty issue.
Yeah, it's the whole.
You ask a woman, they say, "What's the problem?" You ask a man, they're like, "Yeah, of course."
Mm-hmm.
Right? David, you agree? Okay, good. Okay, so let's continue here. Any other questions here? Jennifer, it looked like you had a question brewing. No, you're good? Okay, good. So the Talmud now continues. Okay, so some rulings are offered in this question. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Rav Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel, Halacha no se isha v'achar kach yimot Torah. The law is that one should take a wife and afterward to study Torah. Rabbi Yochanan says, however, Reichayim bitzavoroi v'yasok b'Torah. With a millstone around his neck, can one study Torah? Did someone just define marriage? A millstone around his neck? Oh my goodness, certainly not. Therefore, one should devote himself to study, and afterward, he should look to marry. Tell you what, Rabbi Yochanan has a sense of humor, right? Right? The low pligi, and there's in fact no argument, no dispute between Shmuel and Rabbi Yochanan. Halon, the halahu. For this ruling of Shmuel was issued for us, the Jews of Babylonia. The halahu, and this ruling of Rabbi Yochanan was issued to the Jews of Eretz Yisrael, right? And what he's probably referring to about the millstone around his neck is the obligation for livelihood. When one is married, right, he is obligating himself to supporting his wife. And that is the obligation of the millstone. He's got to go to work. I got you, Eliana, I got you, right? So, right, he's got an obligation to support his family. And once he has this obligation of the millstone, meaning he's got to go work and he's got to support his family, right? He doesn't have the ability now to sit and learn Torah with clarity because he's got this burden on his shoulder. Okay, so an incident emphasizes the point that a man should seek to marry early. Mishtabach le Rav Chisda Rav Huna b'Rav Hamnuna the Adam Gadolu. Rav Chisda praised Rav Hamnuna to Rav Huna, saying that he was a great man. Amar lei, Rav Huna replied to Rav Chisda, Kishiyavo liyadcha haviehu liyadi. When he comes to you, bring him to meet me. Ki also, eventually, Rav Hamnuna came and visited, and when he arrived to meet Rav Huna, Chazie Deloy Poris Sudra. Rav Huna saw that he was not wearing a cloth covering upon his head. He had nothing covering his head. It's customary for married men to wear a head covering, right? Not only a yarmulke, but like a hat or something, some type of something, an identifier that people used to have. You think about 50 years ago, 60 years ago, right? People wore a hat. They walked in the street. They wore a hat. Once they got married, they had a certain sense of, of dignity. So he wasn't wearing anything. Amalei. He therefore said to him, "My taima lo prisas sudra. For what reason do you not wear a cloth over your head? Something." Amalei, Rav Hamnuna said to him, "The lo nesivna. I'm not married." Adrinu la pemine. When Rav Huna heard this, he turned his face away from him. Amar lei, chazi de lo chazis lehu laapi adenosavs. He says, "See to it that you do not look upon my face again until you have married." The Gemara explains Rav Huna's harsh response. Rav Huna l'tamei. Rav Huna, it was going according to his own opinion. The Amar ben Esrim Shana v'lo nasa isha. Rav Huna said that a man who reaches the age of 20 and has not yet taken a wife, kol yama be'avera, he will live each of his days in sin. A man who's 20 years old and isn't married is living in sin. The Gemara asks in astonishment, "Ba'avera salkadaita? Can you really think that he will live each day in sin, committing acts of immorality constantly?" The Gemara replies, "Elo'ema, rather say that Rav Hamnuna means this, kol yamav bihiru ravira, but rather he lives each of his days with thoughts of sin." Okay? As an unmarried man, he will lack a permissible outlet for the passions inherent in man's nature and will come to entertain licentious thoughts regularly. So, therefore, the Talmud tells us that a person should get married at an earlier age. Earlier age will allow him to not have these sinful thoughts. The theme of Rav Huna's statement is corroborated by a brisa. Amar Rava said, "V'chein tanad be'Rabbi Shmuel," and so taught in the academy of Rabbi Shmuel. Ad chav shana yoshev HaKadosh Baruch Hu mitzapel Adam. Until he is 20 years of age, the Holy One, blessed is he, sits and waits and awaits a man asking, Masa Yisa Isha, when will he take a wife for himself? Kevin Shigia Chaf Velonasa, and when he reaches the age of 20 and yet has not married, Omer Tipachatz Mosav. God says, let his bones swell. Okay, Tipachatz Mosav. In connection with the above, the Gemara reports a comment to Rav Chizda. Rav Chizda said, Hi da difna michavre, that I am greater, he said, than my peers. Dinasivna bishitzar. He says, I am greater than my peers, and it's due to the fact that I married at the age of 16. V'yavinasivna bar besa, and had I married at 14 years old, Havamina l'satan, I would have been able to say to Satan, Gira be'enach, arrows in your eyes. Means I would have had such great spiritual abilities if I would have gotten married 2 years earlier at the age of 14. The Gemara, the Talmud here is very clear about the benefits and the challenge when one is not married, right? When one is not married, like the commentaries explained here, a person doesn't have a way to permissibly fulfill their natural hormonal needs. And that's why there's a mitzvah for a man to always be married. A man needs to be married. It's an obligation on a man to be married. He needs to be in a. It's more than just that. It's not only for the purposes of his desires and temptations. It's not the only reason. It's because a man needs to be he needs to be harnessed. He needs to be in a system that is putting him in a framework of growth. And that you have in marriage. When a person's out of marriage, they're all over the place. All right, my dear friends, this concludes today's Talmud study.
Oh, that went by fast.
I want to thank you for joining me in this incredible journey of the Thinking Talmudist series. And if you have any questions, we're going to go off of Facebook now. For all of our friends on Facebook, have a magnificent Shabbos. Thank you for joining us. Please like and share these videos. And we look forward to seeing you in our Zoom classroom every week on Friday at 12 p.m. Central. Be there or be square. Have a great Shabbos.